What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto was raised by the Joker or what if Naruto had a shape-shifting bloodline and was insane, go check out my main channel. And if you're interested in what if Naruto was taken at birth by Sephiroth or what if Naruto had crystal release, go check out my third channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. Another day off from office work. That was Yujito's day so far. She wasn't doing anything, she didn't have a mission. Samui wasn't inside the village, that meant she was all alone. B was present, probably busy burning chakra with his brother Ai the Yandame Raikage. She wasn't that much obsessed with training and becoming strong to be as obsessed as it was. The man had weights inside his office and never took a day off in his training regimes. No wonder he had no personal life aside from the one he had with his younger brother. Yujito was walking alone in the busy streets of the market district, strolling aimlessly. She had no purpose for leaving her apartment, no purpose for taking a walk. She just thought that perhaps there would be something for her to do outside. She could have joined B and AI, but she didn't feel like it. She wanted to do something for a woman. She wasn't as much invested in training as much as those two, and besides, she had her own needs. She had also done more than enough training. From as long as she could remember, she'd been forced to do hardcore training, but now she had a choice. If she didn't, she wouldn't. Still, being a Jinchuriki meant that someone always had an eye on her, someone was always taking notes, and everything that she did, it annoyed her to no end that some people just couldn't leave her. They thought her movements needed to be watched simply because she was a Jinchuriki, nothing less, nothing more. The fact that she fought for the village was no matter. The fact that she was loyal to Kumo wasn't seen through those ignorant eyes, but it was alright. Even though she was within busy streets, it was as if she was all alone. If she could close her ears and eyes, she could listen to the sound of her mind quite well. The chattering and murmurs beside her could die easily. At least no one was afraid or disgusted to walk in the same path as hers. Still, she was at ease with the walk. The sight of bright blonde hair caught her attention, making her eyes snap ahead. As much as she could tell, there was no one with as much bright hair as him smiling brightly. Yujito increased her pace as she pushed forward to see if it was him. Her feet carried her without troubles as she walked past a few people while nothing peeled off her eyes from the blonde hair she was seeing. It only took a few tireless minutes for her to finally reach the person, Naruto. She wasn't exactly sure it was him, but she still couldn't hold back all her excitement at the thought it might be him. He'd truly done a number on her by disappearing for a long time after he told her he would return soon. Not even a letter was sent to her, not even a hello came her way. The man could frickin' teleport to anywhere he wanted. Slowly Naruto turned around to face the woman, a warm smile planted across his face. "Hello Yujito," he said in a light tone. Truly, he was happy to see the blonde woman. Why wouldn't he? She was a fellow Jinchuriki, and the time he spent with her during his visit had been quite pleasant. Of course, he was a little different back then, but he was still Naruto. Yujito smiled a little brightly, never minding the people beside her. "It is you," she said, looking straight at his gaze. "What is the president of the most powerful organization doing in a place like this all by himself?" Naruto wasn't exactly just a normal person given his position. It was unnatural to see him at a place like this all alone, and he wasn't exactly anonymous. Many people knew of him already. The priest at the Fire Temple said, "If I took a stroll in this street, I would meet up with a beautiful woman. I came here to confirm if his prophetic powers were actually real." Naruto said, his smile kept in place. Yujito actually blinked before shaking her head. "How I wish that were true," she mumbled before getting far closer to him. Naruto made no reaction to confirm whether he heard her or not. "Come on, let's go somewhere a little more private." Yujito took the blonde by the hand and body flickered both to a secluded training ground. "You know Yujito?" Naruto started looking around the training ground. It was the same ground she'd brought him to the last time he was in this village. "And when was that? When you said somewhere a bit private, I thought you meant somewhere really private." Yujito responded by punching him on the shoulder. "What happened to you?" "No, never mind that. Where have you been all these months? I have been waiting for you after you left. Like you going to return soon?" She was standing just beside him, standing on the same rock he stood on. "I have been really busy," Naruto said, "but that is no excuse. Regardless, I am here today, and I just came to see you since it has been some time since we last spoke." "So I heard," Yujito said in response to him being busy. "I'm surprised that you'd take your time off from running the UN and building a village to come here. Building a village must really take a lot, and you always have to be there to supervise things just to ensure that nothing goes wrong." Naruto took a sit on the rock before responding. "Getting free time is rather difficult since I have to see that projects approved by the UN's committee are running and making progress. I also have to deal with Yuzu and things with Konoha. That really puts a lot on me and robs me of any chance of any personal time." The UN's executive committee had sat down along with other committees to discuss how things would be done over the next year and the years to come. The meetings were held in Yuzu over the past weeks, and That meant that he didn't have the chance to leave clones behind to do his dirty work for him. Using clones wasn't really advisable to him anymore, as the work overload was putting a good strain on his mind. Shizen had suggested he stop using them and take some time off to allow his mind to rest. Aside from the meetings with the UN's committees, he had a great deal of time invested in the academy he'd started, and use of the academy building had been built and finished thanks to the crazy work of his army of clones. By the time it was completed, he'd already found a number of students who would be taught in the academy and other people to help him in the matter, as he couldn't do all things by himself. More work meant he neglected Miyuki, which caused a strain on their relationship. She had no problems in discussing business with him, but when it came to other matters it was a dead no, since he wasn't really experienced with the matters of relationships. Naruto had just allowed the thing to run its course, hoping that she would eventually come around. He blamed Itachi for making him focus on work alone and neglect to honor his responsibilities to the daimyo. A pity the Uchiha was dead. It seems you've been busy as you should be, Yujito said. For a leader he had to be busy to show that he was indeed working if things were to go smoothly. In this founding phases he had to pull all stops to make sure everything worked perfectly. Enough about work. How have you been holding up aside from the work overload? I've been well, really. A few spats with his tenant over some life-changing decisions were nothing to mention. The QB was only concerned about its well-being, which extended to him, so it was only given the bijou be concerned when he did reckless things. How have you been bored? That word summed it up. Aside from a few missions there and there, I don't have much to do with the Akatsuki-gon. There isn't much threatening for a Jinchuriki. You should give me a hand, then I have plenty of work to spare in Yuzu and other lands. Really, in the fire country, aim, wind, Kiri, and snow, there was work for him to be done. Even though he'd set up an organizational structure, there were still much work for him to do, and another problem was that he couldn't find the right people to fill in the posts needed to be filled on a day-to-day basis. You know, that would actually be nice. I can get to see you as much as I would like, Yujito said with a small smile. Yeah, it would be good having a fellow Jinchuriki and blonde around to see matters of this world. Naruto added. The Yondaime Raikage has to agree upon that, though I don't think he will agree to send out one of his best shinobi out to work for someone else that easily. Yujito frowned. That is mostly likely going to be the case, but we won't know for sure until we try, she said, just to give herself some hope. Speak of the devil, Naruto said, and after a few seconds the Raikage crashed into one of the rumbles around the place. Yes, he literally crashed down, yet looked so perfectly fine, grand, intense. Perhaps I was told that a blonde Uzumaki had sneaked into my village, and I rushed to find him when I realized that he owed me a sparring match. As started walking towards the two blondes, he did have his concerns on the security. If Naruto was able to enter his village undetected and only be discovered because he hadn't bothered hiding himself. You sneaked in? Yujito asked, staring into the eyes of Naruto. The thought never came to her mind when she saw him in the streets. How could he, and why would he even go that far? Naruto smiled nervously, scratching the back of his head. Well, I wanted to see you first. If I had gone through the gates, the guards would have forced me to see the Raikage first. Given all that has been happening around me, he was an important figure, not just a Jonin of Konoha. With his presence, the leader of a village had to be brought. They wouldn't allow him to stroll around when he was busy rebuilding a village, not when he could poach there shinobi and civilians. Yujito shook her head, but she was actually smiling inwardly, not to sound ungrateful for the thought. But that is just crazy. You could have been caught by Ambu and put in a cell for infiltrating the village. With everything going around you, it wouldn't be far-fetched to assume that you would be here for intel. I thought of it, but I was confident I wouldn't get caught. Besides, you wouldn't assume that of me, would you? Yujito the blonde merely shook her head in response. She wouldn't have thought of it, but she would be suspicious given the way he is acting. It was totally different from the way he was when he came here back then. A mask, maybe not. That I'm not happy that you do that just to see my Yujito is set, emphasizing the word. I would have liked it if you came through proper channels, but aside from that, this has given me a chance to review my security. Naruto nodded. I can tell you how I was able to enter the village and how to prevent it from happening again, the blonde said, a bit serious. Of course. This raised brows from the two. With him doing that would give you an inner knowledge on how we do things here. As stated, no accusation being thrown, he was just stating a fact. You could possibly use that to your advantage. Yes, Naruto didn't deny it, but you've dealt with my father and I'm not so different from him in the heart. I mean, the difference is that I'm not willing to wear my heart on my sleeves. After everything I experienced. It was silent for a few moments. He sighed and looked firmly at Naruto. How about it then? I don't have all day. Why don't we get this over with quickly so you can tell me about this UN, though he would only be interested if the blonde proves himself to be a worthy opponent. Naruto looked at Yujito. I'll take you out on a date later on, he said, smiling before looking at A again. I did promise to fight you once I returned again and see who is faster. Officially, you hold the record for being the fastest man in the elemental nations. I cannot speak of the iteration because it was originally crafted by the Nidaime Hokage. Show me then if you can hold your own like your Father Naruto took off his robes and handed them to Yujito before flashing to a clear ground. Both A and Yujito noticed a change in him. Their happy look he had on him had disappeared, replaced by a look of indifference. Another mask. Yujito thought the look was just like when he first came here, and when he spoke there was just nothing in his voice, just complete impassiveness. I can do better than the Yondaime Hokage Raikage-sama, Naruto said, taking a stance. Come and I will show you what I mean by that. I couldn't deny it. His own eyes and senses clearly told him the truth. Naruto was indeed a completely different person when he faced in a battle. Even though this is just a sparring match though, he wasn't going to take things lightly. He had a reputation to uphold, and if he wanted to successfully test Naruto's strength he would have to be serious. But still, the look on the blonde's face clearly told him he wasn't going to fool around either. Yujito had also noticed the change in his expression. He realized swallowing it, took his own stance, prepared himself for a battle which would undoubtedly be decided by speed. They wanted to see who was the fastest between them. After all, he didn't start by activating his lightning cloak, not without studying the movements of his opponent. Even though Naruto was completely unreadable, he would have to move soon, and there would be a pattern in which he follows, of which he would take advantage of being invited to come a bust towards Naruto in the fastest speed he could manage without his cloak. The speed was no less than high jonin, and he was quick to reach the waiting blonde, who didn't move a muscle until the last moment. A's upper body was leaned forward a bit in the same position he took after taking off his right punch, cut through air, rushing towards the face of his opponent. Naruto avoided the punch by jumping back a little. Once his feet landed on the ground firmly, he again closed the distance between him and a right foot raised high for a high kick. The Yondaime Raikage simply caught the kick with his left hand. He did so quite easily. He proceeded to pull Naruto towards him by his foot and aimed a right punch at the blonde's chest. Naruto crossed both his hands in front of his chest to create a defense so that it didn't punch his chest, as he was positive the punch would be heavy enough to put him through pain. The punch connected with both his hands without breaking through the defense. Put Naruto off balance by pushing the right foot, which was still above ground, towards his left, making the blonde twist a bit. He didn't waste a second before twisting anti-clockwise, returning with a high kick that connected with the off-balance Naruto's temple. The kick had enough force in it to propel the blonde into the air. He was quick to recover though. A few flips in the air and he was down on the ground on both his feet. A's heavy left foot crashed down just in front of him, without a moment of notice. With so much energy stored up in the left leg for proper balance, the Yondaime Raikage swung his right foot straight at Naruto on the waist level, but the blonde reacted quickly by swiftly lunging down. Naruto felt a considerable amount of wind blew by him as A's kick missed him. The kick had been thrown like a missile, like the man wanted to break him with just a single hit. Never giving the air much thought, Naruto used his current position to great effect. The Yondaime Raikage only had on foot on the ground, and since he had lunged down, both his hands were close to it. He grabbed the left foot with as much force as he could and pulled it up, throwing the Raikage off balance as his right foot was still above ground. The pull Naruto did was just like a leg sweep and caused the Raikage to bend back, as he would inevitably crash down on his back if Naruto doesn't attack. The leader of Yuzu didn't let up, because he immediately got into position and reinforced his right foot with chakra before kicking A on his back. The contact with the man's back created a sound that made Yujito wince from where she stood watching the battle. It really had to have hurt, but it showed no signs of being in pain. What didn't allow the Raikage to get into the air was that when Naruto kicked him, he had his right hand held up ready to catch him. The hand caught the man's foot before slamming him down the ground with so much force that his body got buried down the ground. As Naruto leaned downwards to grab the foot he'd let go, A's foot suddenly sprung out from the ground, catching Naruto on the face, making him move back a little. What followed then was a punch he didn't see straight on the gut. The punch didn't make a sound, nor did it move him, but it turned his intestines upside down, burning him with enough pain to make him freeze for a moment, and a moment was all the Raikage needed to make his move. He followed his assault by punching Naruto straight on his chest before delivering a spinning kick that landed on his forehead, sending him airborne. I guess I shouldn't expect anything less from a taijutsu expert like yourself with your experience. Landing a meaningful hit with the blonde trailed off when A's lightning cloak bust into life, and without even a warning the Raikage's form materialized behind him. Even though he was quick to twist around, he was only met with a brutal kick that connected with his face. This time he was sent sailing like a bullet into the piles of rocks that surrounded the clear ground. After hitting a few rocks, Naruto finally hit the last one. He wasn't able to break as the momentum had worn off. He closed his left eye, watching the Raikage impassively. No mercy, I see, even if this is just a sparring match, he said, standing up. He held out a single hand seal as winds began to gather around him. Even I can play that game, but I won't play fair. After those words left his mouth, he disappeared in a twisting motion. The movement had been so fast that Yujito had to narrow her eyes to get a look at things better. If I had thought that Naruto would appear somewhere close to him. He was wrong. The blonde appeared a distance away from him. He also noted that Naruto's eyes had gained a much more glowing glint, more ocean blue eyes, that made him assume that he had activated his own armor. A blurred out of sight and a blistering lunge straight at Naruto. No more than a second later he was right in front of the blonde, both feet putting an amount of pressure on the ground below him in a quick burst of movement, and the Raikage twisted around with enough speed that Naruto felt the wind moving with him. It returned with a high right-footed kick that was aimed at Naruto's temple. Naruto held out his left hand, reinforced with wind, and blocked the kick that proved to do nothing as he was still sent flying by the power of the kick, but it did no harm because of his armor. As soon as Naruto hit the ground, it came in flying towards him. With a dropkick, the blonde jumped backwards slightly to avoid the dangerous move. Demolished the ground. Naruto once stood lifting up some debris, but the Raikage was again fast to react to his miss. Using his feet to force enough power, he jumped slightly at Naruto, catching the left foot of the blonde. He then proceeded to smash the blonde down the ground with as much force as he could. Have jumped into the air, attempting another drop kick on the blonde, who still laid on the ground. Naruto responded by flicked both his index fingers straight at her, releasing wind bullets. The bullets hit the Raikage with a bang. One hit him straight on his forehead and another hit under his right foot. The force of the bullets repelled the Raikage away from Naruto, giving him enough time to recover and prepare his next move. By the time it was on the ground, Naruto was kneeling him. The Raikage felt something below him and quickly sped off. When an explosion rocked through the ground below him, he was able to escape unscathed, not giving Naruto a chance to attack. A quickly flashed behind Naruto. He was in for a surprise when he found Naruto's right palm facing him while the blonde still remained looking the other way. Go away, Naruto muttered. It wasn't the name of the jutsu, just something he felt like saying. He had merely released a quick burst of wind that hit the Raikage's entire body, forcing him backwards. I thought this was going to be a battle of speed and taijutsu. They said you're not exactly using pure taijutsu yourself, Naruto responded with a shrug of his shoulder. Fair enough. I said he could guess that the blonde wasn't using any other technique because he knew that he would have to be fast as him to catch him. For a lightning user, the current element Naruto was using was the best, and as it appeared the blonde had good mastery over it. Naruto stretched out his right hand, wind cutter. After those words left his lips, he twisted clockwise in a sudden and fast movement that would have caught any other opponent by surprise. Although he couldn't see the jutsu, he could see its effects. It affected a wide range because of the spin Naruto had done and seemed fast on instinct. The Raikage jumped into the air to avoid any surprise. His eyes quickly snapped up when Naruto suddenly flashed just above him. He should have predicted it. The move was almost predictable. Both Naruto's hands slammed onto his head with so much force that the Raikage was sent crashing down the ground into a loud boom. Wind hammer. Naruto added a follow-up to the previous attack. The hammer crushed down on the down Raikage. This caused another boom, propelling a further down the ground. Knowing the Raikage was still kicking effectively, Naruto rushed down where the Raikage laid. He was surprised when the Raikage suddenly burst forth from the ground, meeting him halfway. It was only the fact that he had fought a lot with Itachi and learned to predict moves that he was able to narrowly dodge a bullet of a punch from the Raikage. His right hand had formed a small Rasengan purely on instinct as A's right fist passed through his felt cheek, hitting him with some lightning currents. Naruto crashed his Rasengan on the Raikage's gut with gravity on his side. Since he was moving downwards, the Raikage was sent crashing back into the hole he had left in a haste. Before he even landed on the ground, Naruto had already thrown 3 kunais with explosive tags right beside the crater. He didn't wait for anything before allowing them to go boom in a beautiful work of fireworks that made rise to red flames. A shot out of the flames with nothing but small bruises. Once he recovered his breath, he rushed at Naruto. Before jumping up, he attempted a high flying kick which Naruto dodged by jumping away from its path. The Raikage crashed into the ground before flashing towards Naruto again. He appeared a bit high, right foot raised high, and attempted a back heel. Naruto blocked it effectively before flashing away from the man. Once he landed on the ground, it was at him again. The left foot was swung at his head. This time Naruto caught the foot with both his hands and didn't let go. He attempted twisting, but Naruto allowed the man to twist without allowing him to escape. After a few seconds he pushed the foot away, putting the man off balance. What surprised him was when he could no longer move his left foot. It felt like it was glued to the ground. What the don't worry, Naruto started. Because of that lightning around you, the seal won't be able to last long, but a few seconds is all I need. By the time he finished speaking, I saw wind rotating around Naruto's fist like a driller. At that velocity it was bound to bypass his cloak. Naruto let loose of the unforgiving wind punch straight into A's gut. The impact of the punch with his gut had created a shockwave that demolished the ground under him, but miraculously only moved him a little. The next punch didn't produce a miracle. It pummeled his chest without mercy, shooting him backwards. Naruto Wasn't done, he appeared above him, left foot covered in the same jutsu as his right hand. A was a brave man, but he closed his eyes when the kick crashed into his chest. A bullet crashed down the ground, a loud boom lifting amounts of debris. It didn't take a minute for A to return to his feet. Bastard, he growled, I told you I wouldn't play fair. Naruto shrugged off his shoulders. Besides, in terms of physical prowess, you're superior to me. I can't win a battle of power with you, and you're a match for me. In terms of stamina, restricting your movements is a way to level the ground, though using wind armor supplemented his strength. However, at this level it wasn't enough. Tisuke growled before snapping his snack and stretching a few muscles. Your little trick wore off in a second after the first punch, so he dashed towards the blonde. Naruto dodged a punch from A by crouching down the ground, remembering what the blonde did last time. A jumped up to avoid being caught by the blonde on either of his feet. While the Raikage was still above ground, he decided to attack again, moving for a chop while the blonde was still crouched down. Naruto responded by raising both his hands up to avoid being hit by a technique that seemed powerful. If the speed of the Raikage was an indication, when A's right chop connected with Naruto's hands, it caused the blonde to bend further and forced both his feet to dig deep into the ground. Naruto realized that even if it wasn't a punch, the attack still carried much weight. If that had hit him, it would have left him nursing his wounds. As he tried moving his hands, he realized that he may have blocked the attack, but it did a number on his body. His inability to move for a moment was enough for A to touch down the ground before kicking him straight on the face, sending him airborne. The Raikage didn't allow him to hit the ground as he appeared under him before both his hands grabbed him just above his waist. A proceeded to slam him down the ground head first. The amount of force by the attack resulted in his head digging deep into the ground while his feet remained up. A then took Naruto's foot, pulling him out of the hole. He twisted around for a few moments before lunging the blonde towards the direction Yujito stood. The Jinchuriki was even tempted to catch her fellow blonde, but refrained from doing so. By now some Umbu were watching the battle, while some few high-ranked shinobi were also observing from far. The best choice was just to stand still and watch everything. Naruto surprised Yujito by doing several flips in midair before landing on a rock on both his feet. His landing was graceful, like he hadn't been just lunged into the air by. She was surprised further when he did his twisting thing to disappear. The rock he was standing on was completely shredded into small pieces. A met Naruto halfway, and both their punches connected between them, causing the ground to demolish under them. Under the weight of both punches, when Naruto was certain that he was going to lose the battle, he raised his left hand, flicking the index finger. He shot an invisible wind bullet that hit straight on the forehead, making him stumble backwards a little. Naruto took advantage of the situation by closing the distance between him and the Raikage. The moment his right palm landed on A's chest, the Raikage threw in a heavy punch that would have knocked him out, but Naruto raised a wind shield to block it. Shit accursed. When a mark started to appear on his chest, the only reason Naruto was able to penetrate through his lightning was because wind was stronger when facing with lightning. What made it worse was that Naruto's control over the element was really good. If he were to be honest with himself, Naruto didn't allow his hand to leave A's chest because he knew the moment he cut the flow of chakra with the cursed seal, the lightning coursing through AI would burn it out. A clone puffed into existence behind the blonde and went behind the Raikage. It touched the man before Naruto spoke, creating some distance between them. I don't think that I will be able to use the same seal against you twice, so I have to use this opportunity wisely. He held out his right hand and his blade appeared in a puff of smoke. This is a different seal, A corrected. Even though Naruto was the one applying the seals, by the effects of both seals he could tell they were different. The first one increased the weight on his foot by a large amount, and this one restrained all his movements. Even his lightning cloak wasn't sparkling as it should. Naruto nodded. The same seal cannot work twice because of that lightning, he stated. Now then, but before he could even move to cut the Raikage, lightning bust out from the man, even managing to dispel his clone before Naruto even knew what was happening. A had appeared in front of him, a hard punch that made him spit out blood crushed into his chest without any restraints. His chest felt like it had been hit by a sledgehammer, and if it wasn't for his wind cloak it would have broken his ribs. If followed these by a knee to the gut, making Naruto bend forward a bit. The Raikage wasn't showing any mercy. He grabbed Naruto by his face, lifting him above ground before brutally slamming him down the ground, causing a crater where the blonde crashed. To follow this by attempting to stomp on the blonde with his right foot, Naruto countered this by raising his left hand, forming a wind barrier above him, while his right was outstretched wide. A's foot only managed to force Naruto further into the ground, showing no concern. The Raikage wanted to break through the barrier with a quick punch, but an invisible force hit him on the face, making him stumble back a little. This gave Naruto enough time to escape the sight of them. The blonde winced, wiping the blonde off his lips. If I get hit like that again, I'm not gonna be good, he thought. The blonde held both his hands together before going through hand seals. Once done, he tilted his head a little to the side as Gusts of winds began to pick up around him. This was the true might of his wind cloak, but because of the low levels of wind around here, it forced him to use his own chakra to generate wind, and that consumed a lot of chakra as well as stamina. While he could battle with it with speed at this level, he tested the full speed of the wind cloak to be slightly faster than the narration. However, when used in sage mode, it was another story. He was a destructive force of nature. In that state, the wind armor could protect him effectively from A's attacks, but he still needed something to fight off against the man's physical power, which increased with the use of his lightning cloak. He wasn't sure that the attacking power his wind cloak gave him would be enough, but this was a good testing ground. His clone was done with gathering natural energy, but since it was limited, he had to be decisive on the moment he wishes to use it. The good thing was that using natural energy replenishes his spent-up chakra. This will be over soon, as stated, walking slowly towards Naruto. He then completely vanished out of sight. Lariat. Although the technique had the potential of killing the blonde, they had the confidence in the fact that Naruto was a Jinchuriki, so he would be able to survive. He was greatly surprised though when Naruto escaped from his technique with barely a wound. No, shocked was the right word. Shocking, isn't it? Naruto's expression was still impassive as he rhetorically questioned, "I will explain what happened to you. My armor may be able to repel your attacks, but the more it takes a hit, the more it weakens. Because I don't want it to weaken, I avoid getting hit directly." Yes, you did hit me just now. My control over wind isn't just good, it is perfect. Wind plays an important role on how fast you travel. A larger object meets more wind resistance, meaning it can't travel fast even though you're fast. And simply body flicker close to me. There's something within a close proximity. The wind around me in this distance is much stronger, and just like when you drop something into a bucket of water, the top water reflects. The same as for me. When you reach this special distance, my senses are alert. While your speed is decreased naturally, you can't feel it because of your speed, but when looking at things in slow motion, you will be able to notice it. In other words, time slows down enough for me to react without you realizing it. Naruto paused for a moment before asking, "Would you like to test this theory?" A's response was jumping into the air. His descend was down at Naruto with his right punch positioned for a hard punch. He was moving fast enough to actually feel the wind hitting his face. His eyes looked carefully at Naruto, who was just standing still looking up at him. His fist reached striking distance with the blonde's temple, but in a quick fluid movement the blonde moved to the right a little, making his punch miss, and it went straight to the ground and had missed by mere inches. While A's punch was still on the ground, Naruto twisted around clockwise. His back heel crashed into A's face, sending the raikage airborne, but the man was quick to recover as he did several flips and landed on the ground before taking off like a bullet. He closed the distance with the blonde appearing in front of him. He went for a super punch, the knockout punch, but Naruto tilted his head in the last moments, watching it pass on the left side of his head. May looked down again. Naruto smashed a Rasengan into his gut. It wasn't a big one, but a small one, probably afraid to do more harm to him. It released a snort at the thought as he was sent backwards by the force of the Rasengan. Upon his recovery, it landed on the ground and watched the blonde carefully. "You're able to dodge my attacks, but not because you're faster than me. You're only able to slow me down." As stated, Naruto had proved to be faster than him. He'd only proved that he could slow him down and be able to dodge his attacks, and not just that, but be able to counter-attack. Considering that you're not making any big moves, I can assume that with that special zone in place you can't really attack. Naruto nodded. "It is good for defense and counter-attacking, which is why I would never use it against an opponent slower than me. However, my speed is quite something." He didn't finish his words, because he suddenly did the twisted A only reacted on instinct when Naruto appeared in front of him. His right hand made like a claw, moving downwards for a slash across his chest. A managed to lean back to avoid it. Naruto's right hand crashed into the ground while his right foot was moved quickly for a high kick straight at A. The Raikage blocked it by folding both his hands across his chest to avoid being hit. The kick only managed to push him back a little with his hands still on the ground. Naruto did what he had wanted to do. "Prison of the Wind God," he muttered before standing up quickly. While I was still recovering, "Activate." He snapped his fingers before landing on the ground. "See, I can move that fast," the blonde stated. "That is nothing," but before he could move he noticed something which made him stretch out his right hand to inspect. There was an invisible wall, and it was all around him, covering all sides. "What is this, my little cell?" Naruto responded casually. "In the next few minutes you will run out of oxygen, as there is none in there, and your lightning cloak will die out." Though he didn't believe it at first, he found that to be exactly true. It didn't take long before he could find some difficulty in breathing. He couldn't bring in any oxygen in, and he could feel that it was draining him. He attempted punching the walls, but it felt like he was hitting a steel cold wall. The thing didn't budge. Using more energy to break out didn't do him any good. After a few punches he was on his knees, lightning cloak gone and becoming paler by the second. Naruto snapped his fingers, allowing the Raikage to breathe. With the disappearance of his jutsu, A took a long breath before standing up. Activate your cloak so we can end this. He did as told, but before he could even think, Naruto was already in front of him. He was shocked. In fact, he hadn't even taken his eyes off the blonde, and yet he disappeared from his sight. He did note the strange markings on his eyes, but had to brace himself when a hammer took out all the air inside his lungs. A Sage mode. Naruto pummeled the Raikage straight on the chest with a Sage and Wind enhanced punch. Wind alone was able to break through the defenses of the man, and as a result, A coughed a mouthful of blood before being sent plummeting away into the rocks on the other side. The man crushed several rocks in his wake while his body refused to take any command. The momentum stopped a distance away from Naruto, and the man found it difficult to comprehend what had just happened. Natural chakra, Naruto said, standing behind the fallen Raikage, whose lightning cloak was still burning, and noticed that the blonde now looked normal when in Sage mode. Only my punches rival those of Tsunade. They can be stronger than hers. In this case, I was also using Wind, which you can remember what one of its punches felt like. A combination of my own strengths and jutsu and Wind makes Tsunade's strength nothing before me. There were bits of information that were revealed, but I was quick to shove them at the back of his head. His punches weren't exactly as powerful as Tsunade's, but he made up for that by his speed. He guessed he could concede defeat. Now give me a hand, he said to Naruto after deactivating his cloak. Iwagakure Inoki sighed deeply, frowning. He'd just had another of those spats with his granddaughter. She was deeply into the idea of murdering Naruto for what he did. He wanted payback and would get it eventually, but there would be no gain for working things out in a hurry. Naruto had allies, and if they moved against him at any time soon, they would have those allies to deal with, and Inoki was sure he couldn't deal with them all. It would be the end of Iwagakure if he played any stupid games. In all his best capabilities and power, he was trying to make Kuratsuchi see the bigger picture, but the woman didn't want to understand. Perhaps her already existing hatred of the blonde because of Minato's actions during the Third War made things difficult, and the recent actions by Naruto himself didn't make things any easier either, as the people were demanding blood, but so far he was holding them back and wanted the same to be for Kuratsuchi. He wanted for her to at least understand him, as she was his most likely successor. He didn't want a brat who allowed her emotions to get the better of her. He wanted a rational and logical adult to take over him, because Kuratsuchi didn't want to grow up. Even till this day he had to remain such a kid. Despite his very advanced age, other villages already had 5th Kages and 4th. But he was still holding on as the only Sandaime Kage living. Because of his situation, he couldn't retire. Besides, what would he do if he retired? He thought that he would have Kumogakure as an ally in the fight, as Naruto seemed to be allied with Tsunagakure, Iwagakure, and Kanahagakure. He didn't bother adding the smaller villages, but how could he forget Amigakure? Naruto's own village was nothing. It didn't have a military power. Naruto seemed to have clawed his way into the smiles of the Raikage and their Jinchuriki. In fact, if the latest report was true, the blonde regularly trained in the village with both Kumo's Jinchuriki. After that battle with the Raikage weeks ago, it seemed that the two had become good friends, but it was still not part of the UN or its alliance. He was just someone who got along with the president and founder of the organization. Well, that was at least some good news, as the man could still be swayed, because he hadn't actually joined anything but just kept close ties with the blonde. It was more because of what the blonde gave to the Raikage anyway. If anyone could look at it differently, one would be inclined to believe that it was using the blonde, but it wasn't the case. Thinking so deep is not good for someone your age. Inoki, a voice he could remember, snapped him out of his thoughts. Inoki looked up and saw the man who had revealed himself as Shinji standing just away from the entrance with an Uchiha beside him. He cursed the Uchiha just by looking at him, while the Uchiha remained stoic at the door. Shinji walked up to him. "What do you want?" Inoki demanded in a low but firm tone. His gut wasn't telling himself anything good by this unexpected visit, but then again, this man never came here when expected. He always showed up on unusual times. "Nothing much from you," Shinji stated. "You have refused my offer to join me, and I have been patient long enough. I can no longer wait for you to decide, so I will decide for you. My parade is about to begin, and this will be the start of it." Inoki narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" By now he was on his feet. A troubling fact that bothered him was that he couldn't feel any of his umbu in the corners of the office. "Are you by any chance a temp?" He wasn't allowed to finish as Shinji suddenly appeared in front of him with so much speed that his old eyes could barely follow. "What are those?" Words dried up in his throat when he felt something cold driving through his chest. He looked down and saw that a blade had stabbed him from behind. "Uchiha!" Inoki growled, as it was the Uchiha who had stabbed him. He didn't speak further as he was thrown towards the wall rather forcibly while he started leaking large amounts of blood. "I thought you said you didn't want to do it," Shinji casually asked Sasuke while Inoki was busy fighting for his life at the corner of the office. Inoki by now was certain that there was no one to help him. He was going to die a pathetic death, stabbed in the back by the cursed Uchiha. "You were taking too Long Sasuke shrugged. Shinji didn't say anything to that. He snapped his fingers and the Tsuchikage Tower was obliterated within seconds, causing great panic within the village. He didn't immediately leave along with Sasuke. He stayed for a moment just for the people to see him. While shinobi surrounded him, he looked up into the heavens and raised both his hands. I have killed your Kage and soon I will return and subdue this village. He had to conquer other lands first and build upon the great empire of the Bijou King. A few weeks later, Konoha. It was already a new year, the 18th year since the Kyuubi rampage. Tsunade had been Hokage for almost a quarter of those years, and as the days continued to pile up, she was regretting ever being tricked into taking this opportunity to lead the village her grandfather left behind. Things just got messy by the day, and more problems always liked to show up at her door. It was becoming frustrating that she couldn't even begin to rest with everything that has been happening around within the elemental nation. Tsunade looked at her former teammate who was sitting at the window looking outside the office. He'd just returned from a week-long mission he was doing with Naruto and that bastard Kakashi. They'd been destroying many of Orochimaru's bases, but the snake himself continued to evade them all. She didn't know about the latest results though. In the long face she suspected that it was because of another disappointment, as the snake could disappear whenever he wanted to. Orochimaru didn't have any allies they could think of either, so locating him was difficult. At least they destroyed his hideouts and stopped more abominations from happening. No matter what I see in those hideouts and how many times I see it, I can never become used to it. The disgust in whatever he saw was clearly evident in his expression. Jiraiya was sick because of the things that Orochimaru did to other humans. I do wonder what I was thinking when I chased after him. Orochimaru was no longer human. There was no human who could do things that even the Kyuubi agreed to be disgusting, and beyond its taste, more inhuman experiments. Yes, Jiraiya nodded. We're getting close to destroying all of them though. So far Naruto has located 35 around the elemental nations, and we have so far destroyed 21. We will destroy the rest in the coming weeks. Silently sorting out some thoughts, Tsunade spoke. I guess it is only a matter of time before you finally catch Orochimaru. Between the three of them, they wouldn't allow the snake to escape. They would kill him and remove his abomination for an existence from the face of the world. The Sandaime Hokage should have done so long ago, but he was too soft on his beloved student. How had he even begun to love such a person anyway? Tsunade thought even if the Sandaime could see what his student was doing, he wouldn't hate him, but he would be greatly disappointed and blame himself for not realizing it sooner that Orochimaru was evil. The only right the third did by Orochimaru was by denying him the mantle of Hokage. If he had given him the power, more horrors would have certainly occurred. We will catch him soon enough. We were really close on catching a few days ago, but he managed to escape. Jiraiya frowned at the memory. Naruto's visits to the Lightning Country weren't just for his friendship with the Raikage. He was also doing a search on Orochimaru. The hideout they'd found in the Lightning Country was a big one and contained much valuable information. If they'd known they were going to find him there, they would have killed him, but we managed to get valuable information from the hideout. Tsunade nodded. Were you able to see the Sharingan? Jiraiya's frown deepened at the question. On the first day of their search, Naruto had revealed to him that Orochimaru had the Sharingan and most likely possessed chakra from all 9 Bijus like Jubi, whose name is Shinji. Of course Jiraiya had been shocked when Naruto revealed this information. More shocked was Tsunade when he told her. The Godame was skeptical though, but he had confirmed it with his own eyes. Yes, just a glimpse of it though. Naruto does not appear to be worried by it though. He simply says he knows the Sharingan in and out. Whenever I ask why he isn't worried, the little brat has become high almighty these days. Tsunade snorted at the thought that Naruto could handle things by himself with Orochimaru. He's just simply reverted to the way he was when he came back from his training, Jiraiya said, but that is because he is dealing with some emotional problems right now, and he is the leader of his village. The UN still gives him plenty of work as its operations have started without the required number of forces, which means he has to do more work himself. The police force was the main body that has started operating within the Fire Country and along the borders. Kakashi led the forces, but the lack of qualified shinobi forced Naruto to have his clones on many occasions. What emotional problems? She already knew of his work overload. Shizen had treated him once after he'd collapsed due to exhaustion, but she didn't know he had any emotional problems. You know that Naruto started seeing Miyuki some months ago, right? Tsunade nodded. Well, after the UN started off as well as rebuilding Yuzu, he didn't have time for her and she didn't like clones. Things got bad and Naruto went to Yujito and made friendship with the two women blossomed, and eventually Naruto ended up sleeping with both of them. About a month ago he patched things up with Miyuki. He admitted having slept with the women to Miyuki, and she kicked him out. The poor boy has been struggling to deal with it. He even Feels bad as he feels that he betrayed her, so he can control his emotions rather well but doesn't actually know how to deal with them. Tsunade said, "Why don't you help him? He won't allow me." I actually heard this from Kakashi. Kakashi was also a dead end, as even he failed to handle his own emotions. Bottling everything up is killing him, so to avoid it showing, he puts on a blank mask. Always should we send his friends? Jiraiya thought of it for a moment before nodding. That is actually a good idea, Haim. The Toad Sage said, smiling. "I will go gather them." He was gone after that, not even giving her a chance to say anything. Tsunade merely shook her head, smiling sadly. Her relationship with Naruto may be strained, but she still cared for him and wouldn't miss an opportunity to help him like this. Jiraiya gave his best efforts. Also, he even worked for the police force just so Naruto could be free. The Sannin was a member of the disciplinary committee. It wasn't right for him to do that kind of work, but he did it anyway just for Naruto's sake. Both tried. She was sure Minato and Kushina would recognize their efforts, but Naruto's dream looked like it was going to kill him. Peace seemed far away with the chaos Sasuke and Jubi were causing. The world was becoming unstable and Naruto, the UN, was failing to maintain the balance. Tsunade could laugh and say she knew this was going to fail, but she would not when members of the UNA still helped each other in the time of need. Wave country. Despite the cheery sound and smell of the sea, Naruto's head was ringing with other things inside his head. He was at the harbor having just finalized a deal for shipments that needed to reach Yuzu within a week. The thought of returning to his beloved home made his head ache. He had some fun moments inside Yuzu, but the work was killing him. He hadn't thought things would become like this. The need for more helpers was an important job he had to handle. He'd already put on a request to his allies as well as to Kumogakure boasted a large population, and what he needed now wasn't exactly shinobi but civilians who knew administration, and many times he'd been forced to get on his knees and work with others. Well, on the bright side of things, he led by example, and since he frequently works with the employees of the UN, they build a good trust between the president and the underlings. They grew to have an understanding of the way things worked, and for this reason Naruto could still smile at the end of the day. Shinji and Sasuke may be giving him the pains, but their days would come soon with them around. The stability that had formed after the Third War was vanishing slowly. Shinji's empire wasn't doing any good to the shinobi world. It was putting many on edge, making fights boil over, making things. Naruto stopped, a bit annoyed that this person had been watching him for a good hour now, but hasn't even made an attempt to reach him. But she has gotten a lot closer now. "Come, Kuratsuchi, have a seat with me." He was sitting at the edge of a structure that was above the sea with his feet playing in the water. The black-haired woman, now leader of Awagakure, walked up to him. "I hate you," she started. "I can't even believe that I am sitting next to you like this. If someone had suggested it while my grandfather was still alive, I would have killed them, but now because of your position you understand how things work. How long have you been in this country?" 2 weeks. "What do you want?" It took some doing, clench fists, grinding teeth, and silently curses, but she finally said, "At your help," he said in a whisper that must have taken a lot of beating. "To your pride to say that," Naruto stated, stoically looking straight at the endless water ahead of him. "Don't mistake me," Kuratsuchi growled. "I loathe your very existence, but I've tried everywhere I could and got no help. Won't even recognize me as a leader. I can't go to Konoha. You're the so-called helper of those in need, right? That is what you created this UN for everyone." She kept telling her to speak to him as he would be able to help her, but it had taken her 2 months for her to make that decision, and a lot of drinking. "Sasuke and Shinji are your problem," Naruto said. "Well, you have come to the right person. I will help you, but on one condition." "What? Never mind." Naruto waved his right hand dismissively. "What exactly do you want?" "Shinji and Sasuke are enemies of mine, and I will one day fight the death fight with them, so you can say that right now we aren't enemies, because we have 2 mutual enemies. You're still my enemy, just not a threat right now." She had to handle those 2 first. Well, she couldn't do it on her own. They'd embarrassed her. The day Shinji returned to subdue Awagakure, they'd overpowered her and killed many of her men. She'd been powerless, but he could do something. Sasuke was his former teammate and had encountered Shinji before. "Whatever helps you sleep at night," Naruto said, standing up. "Come, let us go to Yuzu so we can discuss the terms of my help." A day later, Amigakure Konan thanked Nagato for teaching her the rain-sensing jutsu. If it wasn't for it, she would have never taken notice of the snake that had infiltrated the village. She didn't bother to leave her tower when she realized that he was coming directly at her, which was something that Naruto had predicted. She stayed in her office and waited for the snake to arrive. "Hello, Konan-san," Orochimaru greeted with a small grin. "Orochimaru," Konan said, leaning further back to her chair. A thought came to her and she spoke it. "Life is unpredictable, isn't it? Years ago you wanted to kill me, Nagato and Yahiko. A few years later you were taking orders from Nagato as a member of the Akatsuki, and now here we are." Orochimaru didn't lose his grin. "A few unexpected things happened, but I never actually joined Akatsuki for anything but to survive and gain a bit of information about the organization. Yes, you relied on us for survival. For that short time you were with us, you ran off to the kids. You nearly killed years ago to hide from Konoha and Danzo. Conan stressed every word, but that doesn't matter anyway. What do you want? Naruto? Conan has been causing me problems, Orochimaru said, walking further closer to Conan, but he stopped just away from her desk. I just came to send a message since he got closer last time. I see, Conan said, standing up. Well, Naruto's not here, but you know that. However, she trailed off as the ceiling above Orochimaru opened, spitting thousands of pieces of paper. Orochimaru was quick to activate the Sharingan. His eyes narrowed when he realized that they were paper bombs. Conan held out her right hand. The walls of the office began to peel off, revealing them to be made of more papers. Thousands of paper bombs began to float around the office. On the floor Orochimaru stood. Blue markings began to form as well as above the ceiling. The door was shut, so were the windows. No escape. Orochimaru looked at Conan. Half of her body had already been turned into paper, as well as her face. The seal on the floor and ceiling are works of Naruto. The one on the floor has millions of my paper bombs stored up, and Naruto says he added some that have the Sharingan's flames stored up. The one on the ceiling contains natural lightning. It was added just in case. Conan explained, this is quite the suicide trap you have here. He wouldn't admit it, but even he wouldn't have thought of something so deadly. He was even impressed that this was created with the thought that he would one day walk in here. This isn't a suicide trap, Conan correct, making Orochimaru frown. One more thing, there are 3 chakra barriers surrounding this office. They are set to contain the explosion from destroying parts of AIM. Naruto says he tested them by having them withstand tailed beast bombs. Do you think this is enough to kill me? Honestly, I don't know, Conan said. However, even if you do survive, in what shape do you think you will be after the explosion? The amount of force alone created by the explosion because of the contained space will be enough to crush your body. Should you survive, I will be waiting. So will Naruto. It wouldn't take him a minute to get here if she summoned him a week later. Wind capital flowers in his hands and casual attire. Check. Naruto wore a smile as he walked into Miyuki's home. He'd received a letter from her saying she wanted to talk to him. He'd quickly left everything to get here as he thought there was another chance for reconciliation. The blonde walked through the rooms but didn't find her anyway. The last place he decided to visit was her study. The moment he opened the door, everything became an illusion. His body froze along with his blood. Sasuke and Shinji were inside the office. That alone brought him great amount of fear, not for himself, for Miyuki. What were they doing in here? He couldn't see her, but he could see her hair as the chair was turned the other side. His mind was already working overtime to feel the stench of blood. He didn't even want to think of something happening to her. How pathetic for a shinobi to be involved with a civilian. You should know that in your position you put these kind of people at risk, since they can't protect themselves, Shinji stated, spinning the chair. Now observe, this happened because of your choice. She was killed because you failed to protect her. You chose peace over her. If you hadn't forsaken her for your stupid dream, nothing like this would have happened. You killed her. On the chair the beautiful daimyo sat, head tilting, the left side hair in place, eyes closed, fresh blood leaking off her mouth and a cut on her neck leaking more blood. Naruto's face twisted as the world turned upside down. Yes, this happened because he failed to protect her. Worse, this happened while she was still mad at him for betraying her trust. He wasn't able to properly apologize. Shinji didn't mind the fact that the air became heavy, possibly due to Naruto's anger. No, it was literally heavy. Pathetic. Wallow in self-pity and blame yourself, as you should feel miserable like other people experience the hatred. And after everything, tell me if you can still smile and say you can understand me and that we can live together peacefully. Shinji looked at Sasuke. Don't kill him, I want to watch him suffer. He then disappeared. Don't worry, she didn't experience any pain at all, Sasuke said, grinning. Though I did pierce through her heart, he stated, revealing the hidden mark of where he'd pierced her with a Chidori. Why, the cursed Uchiha had nearly killed him with that jutsu, and now he had done this to Miyuki. The more he thought of it, the more his face twisted into a nasty way, and his leaking chakra didn't give off a happy feeling. Sasuke merely laughed. Because I felt like it, he said casually. The desk in front of Naruto shattered while multiple cracks appeared around where the blonde stood. Some potent chakra had forced this, and if it wasn't for the fact that he'd been exposed to Jubi's vile chakra, Sasuke would have been on his knees now. Naruto blurred towards Sasuke in the blink of an eye, catching Sasuke by his throat with his right hand, but the Uchiha disappeared. Illusion. Naruto wasn't impressed or even surprised. His look just remained twisted, while chakra was clearly visible around his body. When Sasuke appeared behind the blonde, he found the left palm of the blonde waiting for him. Your hand in Genjutsu is quite pathetic. You need to be better than Itachi to actually put me under an illusion, Sasuke would have responded if it wasn't for what his eyes were seeing. There were many thin and clearly sharp spears glaring at him, all whined. How Naruto had formed them under such a short time was a miracle to him. Those things didn't look any less dangerous to his life. There are actually hundreds Of them Naruto stated still not facing the Uchiha. His tone was just stone cold. It actually made Sasuke feel some cold shivers down his spine. This is one of my inventions, wind style execution. Those spears can pierce through anything. It takes them less than a second to reach their target regardless of distance. I've tested them with Itachi Susanoo and nothing less than a complete thing will result in your body cut into pieces. Still, because of their numbers, speed and size, they can still penetrate through the defenses of the complete Susanoo. The main question though is, little Sasuke, can you activate your complete Susanoo before these things reach you? Do you even have a complete Susanoo? If you have it, some of those spears will perhaps pierce through your eyes, gut, knees, heart, family jewels, forehead, or all these places. Naruto formed a fist, twisting his head to get a look at Sasuke. The Uchiha took notice of those ripple pattern eyes. So Uchiha, how many do you think will hit you? Time skip. Any luck this time? Tsunade asked her former teammate who had just appeared into her office. The Sannin was doing rounds around the elemental nations searching for Naruto, but there hasn't been any luck so far. No, Jiraiya responded solemnly. Where do you think he might be? Jiraiya, what would Minato do if he had been alive? What if something happens to him? He is still alive, Jiraiya said a bit strongly than intended. I will find him eventually. Thinking of what Minato would do will only make us miserable than we already are. The Toad Sage threw a scroll at Tsunade. What is it? Orochimaru's remains. I got them from Konan. The bounty on his head is to be transferred into the UN's account. Konan says she last saw Naruto the time they got rid of the snake. Since then he hasn't appeared to anyone, not to Yujito, not in Yuzu, and not to Mei. The fact that Orochimaru was no longer in the picture brought some confirmed Jiraiya's heart. He would have liked to have been the one to get rid of Orochimaru, because one, they used to be friends, but he accepted the good work Konan did for the shinobi world. With the snake gone, it meant less problems and more souls would be freed from his horrid experiments. So the snake is dead. It is hard to believe that he is finally dead. I am more surprised than Konan had a hand in killing him. She should be excited, but Tsunade wasn't. One of the hot springs? Jiraiya shook his head. He wouldn't risk it, not after this. A few moments of silence passed before Jiraiya spoke. Again, I'm going to look again. I'll meet you at Yuzu just in time for the emergency assembly. An emergency had been called upon by the Konan and Gaara. In light of recent events, they wanted to discuss how they were going to handle things with Naruto's absence. Be careful, Jiraiya. The Toad Sage didn't hear her because he was already gone. Tsunade shook her head. Almost every time he leaves her office, it always appears like he is running away from her. Tsunade settled on her chair, trying to comfort herself. If ever the chair comforted anyone, a more solemn look greeted her face as the missing Naruto thoughts chained any happiness she had. Where are you, Naruto? If only he could hear her. If only he could just appear, just to tell her that he was alright and would return soon. If that could happen, she would be able to smile, breathe a sigh of relief, and rejoice that she hadn't pushed him away from her because of her stubbornness. Tsunade Gaara had never been much of a critical person since his rebirth. He accepted people for who they were and looked at the world in a different outlook. It was a good thing for his village, a village he decided to change for so that he could right his previous wrongs. He'd never shared much of a brotherhood with Naruto, but he hoped that one day they could. It is this new mindset that makes him see things in a different manner, wish for things to turn into a better outcome. He could remember Naruto's last visit very well. Gaara, in all my life I have been through a lot of pain. I have learned to hold back some emotions, feelings, in order to continue with my quest. I once thought I had a brother, but that turned out miserably. You and I are able to understand each other because of the burden we both carry. Our talks are usually business, but I do think that you're a good person, perhaps even better than me. Our past means nothing, the present is what matters. This is why I say that you may be better than me. I am more violent than you are and have contradicting emotions. I fail to handle. My village has become Yuzu, and your family is now extended towards Tsunade. We're both young and leaders, both our hands are bloodied, but we have our mind set on the good. To me, you're a family. You will be someone I will no longer call just a friend, but a brother. I made you vice president of the UN because I know you can understand me better than anyone. In my stead, you will lead the UN. I know it will take much time for peace to be achieved, but I fear that I will not lead all the way. You're in a position to lead the UN without me today. I give you the reins. When I can't lead the UN, lead it. Do what you feel is right. I won't question your choices, but I will support them. Don't fear what others will think or if you will cripple the organization I built. Just do what you feel is right. Naruto was his friend, and he would never think once of betraying him. Not that he has any thought of betraying anyone. Political pressure was at times frustrating, and it could make you walk away from your path because of the image you must keep. Gaara believed that Naruto was saying this because he knew that if one day he wasn't there to lead, some people would start playing other cards. As Naruto admitted, not everyone has the right heart within the UN, but we can only work with them and hope that they will change. Gaara was living this now. With Naruto's disappearance, he had taken reins as acting president of the UN, and he held more power within the UNA. Now he understood the principles and laws of the UN to the heart. Since the UNA was a branch of the UN, it was possible for the UN to outrule it or deny its requests if they didn't abide the objectives of the UN. Gaara assumed that Naruto knew that something like this would happen, hence he decided to make Special Corps managed by the UN, the special forces directly under the president, not the executive, and was powerful enough to make any village consider things twice. The special force was after all made of Jinchurikis. Both had sworn to follow the UN to the heart regardless of which village had done wrong. There was also Aim's army, which could be deployed at any time should there be a need for it. Ever since he took reins, Gaara had received proposals he had refused sternly, and now he was faced with more leaders. He didn't know what they wanted for sure, but he had his guesses. It was to be expected anyway. Some people could never oppose the idea of furthering their own agendas when given the opportunity. Naruto's disappearance did just that. It is really unfortunate that our president has disappeared. The man sitting in front of his desk stated he was of old age, possibly around 60s. You had to expect old people to be plotting things. It is indeed, Gaara said. Naruto had shown him all leaders of the villages that have joined the UNA, and told him all those who weren't recruited by him but offered to join because of the rumor they heard, and when things explained to them they found the idea to be appealing, or so they said. Have you heard anything, Kazekage Dano? Gaara shook his head. There hasn't been anything new I have received from anyone, but I did hear from the Godame Hokage Tsunade that the Yondaime Raikage wishes to lend his hand in the search. Another leader our president has befriended, the old man said, smiling. Why inform the Hokage, though Konohagakure isn't exactly a full member of the alliance, and Kumogakure isn't within the alliance? I cannot answer that question since I have not spoken to either the Hokage or the Raikage. I was only recently informed of the development. Gaara didn't want to make any more speculations about the issue of Kumo. Just because Kumo wasn't a member didn't mean that they couldn't accept their help. That is understandable. The old man nodded. I was informed that Naruto was working with the Godame Tsuchika. Jiwagakure had been left weakened because of Ichiro's actions the day that man returned to the village. He had vandalized many buildings, killed many shinobi, leaving the village with much rebuilding to do. The situation wasn't pretty as no one seemed really interested in helping out the village. Well, aside from Naruto, it isn't exactly Naruto who is working with Iwagakure, but it is the UN. Our main goal isn't just to bring peace but to stabilize the shinobi world, help those in need, and become a savior to those who needed saving. Gaara responded carefully, choosing his words carefully. Yes, I am aware of that. I have read the UN's charter. The old man waved his right hand, saying no need to give him a lecture. You're the president now, and I must ask you which resources are being used to help Iwagakure. I doubt any of the members within the UNA will be overly happy when they are informed of this. We weren't exactly informed of this decision. Gaara knew that it would cause chaos if money donated by members of the UNA was being used. The leaders were being stingy with their money, and with their shinobi forces, resources put forth were always questioned, and they wanted to know what exactly it is that it was used for. We're using the UN's resources put forth by Naruto the Mizukage, and I see. So this is the UN's work outside of the alliance. Gaara didn't respond since it wasn't a question. On another matter, there are certain members whom I represent that are displeased with the missing president's rule. He has too much power. Aside from his position as president, he is a member of the UNCC as well as part of the UNA's NEC, and chair of the Supreme Council. Konan-san and Mei-san also seem to share a special relationship with him. I've also heard some disturbing news about the leader of Amigakure, which makes me question Naruto's decisions. No matter what, a leader can never abandon his post and disappear like this. Gaara's expression remained blank as he absorbed everything. What disturbing news? You're close to Naruto. You must know. Gaara didn't say anything. I imagine if this has informed the rest of the members or taken up to the Supreme Council, Supreme Court, Konan will be removed from power and will most likely face expulsion from the UNA. The Supreme Council only gathered when there are matters of extreme importance. It was recently formed when member of the UNA demanded that they be involved or be given a chance to have a say in the UN's running. Before the Supreme Council was formed, the UNA basically had no authority over the UN, and they couldn't object to the UN's decision, and since they'd signed in for the organization to have jurisdiction in their lands, there had to be a council that convened when things were not going well, and in times of war the disciplinary committee had been put in place to correct when things were going wrong. But the leaders still wanted a committee that mixed both the UN and UNAZCs. However, only the Supreme Court could decide whether the Supreme Council can be called upon if it is matters that the Supreme court can pass on judgment, then there will be no need for the Supreme Council. It would be unfortunate if the past is used against her, and it would be definitely against the principles of the UN. Gaara stated principles aside, this is a matter that should have been disclosed during the first assembly. Some villages who were victims will be sympathetic, and I assume that you know very well how people think. Once this is shown to light, members will start thinking there are other secrets Naruto is hiding. The man paused. Take your time to consider this until Naruto returns. If he does return, we will not bring it up. One more thing, I am very familiar with the man who has taken over from the absent daimyo Miyuki. I have yet to hear of his decision regarding the UN or the UNA. What really affects you are his thoughts on Tsunagakure. With those words said, the old man left Gaara's office. The Kazekage was fully aware that the old man had a seat in the Supreme Council, but he wasn't going to bend to the pressure of politics. Naruto wouldn't allow himself to be blackmailed and would handle the issue well. Gaara had no doubts that it would cause problems if Konan's past was revealed, and it was really a matter that needed Naruto himself. But if things do blow out, he would have to deal with things himself. Still, if the matter is brought to light, the disciplinary committee will investigate. Should Konan be found guilty, they will take their findings and recommendations to the Supreme Court, which will hand in the final judgment. Considering that Konan has not broken any of the UN's law, it is unlikely that the Supreme Court would expel her. The UNA may vote for her removal, but if the Supreme Court says she hasn't broken any law, it won't be within the UN to remove her. However, because it was democracy, she would be likely forced out. Well, that will only happen if he doesn't manage things well. Once the old man had left the office, Temari walked in. Was this one also promising you support if you gave them some positions in the UN? It really made Temari bitter on how rotten some people were. Small villages were already moving towards grabbing power within the UN, which was the main body. While they couldn't get into the EC, they wanted in military disciplinary committee and the judicial committee. Both ladders were independent committees. Some wanted Gaara to hold on to his position as president of the UN because Naruto has proven to be emotionally weak. If he could just disappear like this, never mind the burial of his partner, then he wasn't fit to lead. Temari didn't have a problem with Naruto and was certain that he had his reasons. She was even assured that Gaara would never betray Naruto just for the sake of power. No, Gaara said with a small, barely visible frown. He has tried getting things on his favor within the UN with Naruto. Naturally, Naruto said no. This time Naruto isn't here and he has gained some information. I don't know what his main objective is, but he doesn't want Naruto in power. Why? Wind, fire, and water joined because of Naruto. Amagakure and Hot Springs have also joined because of him. All these five are the main players and support Naruto. That means that Naruto owns the UN and has influence over everything that occurs within. That makes him untouchable. With his influence and growing power, challenging him won't be easy, given that Naruto won't accept anything that is contrary to the law he wrote. He will refute and expose anything that is contrary to what he believes. When executing laws of the UN, he can be rather ruthless. That man can wear a different mask if there be a need. Gaara nodded. With Naruto around, none of the bodies of the UN will be used for anything illegal, and no one will succeed in trying to enrich himself using the organization's resources. So they need a puppet leader, a figurehead who will sometimes take orders from them and act like he doesn't see some of their illegal deals. Temari snorted. So what did he want from you? He must know you won't betray Naruto. Gaara took his time before responding. The acting Wind Daimyo will probably be Miyuki's uncle. Much of Suna's survival depends on the funding from the daimyo. That old man will make things difficult for us if things don't go his way by manipulating the daimyo. He also knows about Konan, and you know what that will do if it becomes public. Gaara could only hope that Miyuki is alive and Naruto returns as soon as he finishes whatever it was that he was doing. So you stab Naruto in the back and he will keep his mouth shut. Gaara shook his head slightly. He doesn't intend to keep it to himself. He will eventually tell, just to discredit Naruto. Should I support him in the chaos that is to ensure you will return the favor? This was going to be troublesome, as Shikamaru would say. How are you going to handle it then? We don't know when Naruto will return or when he has found our daimyo is missing, and since that senile old man is going to tell, we must do damage control or the trust will be broken. The disciplinary committee can't act because the Akatsuki had yet to become a recognized international criminal organization, and under the laws of the UN nothing can be held against Konan since she was a member of the Akatsuki before the UN was formed. However, before the General Assembly things work differently, as well as the Supreme Council. Things will be decided on a vote. This is democracy after all. Gaara smiled. Those last words, those were words Naruto often said. Jiraiya Mei and Koyoki are the only ones aware of this. Aside from us, I will speak to them and figure out how to handle the issue. Naruto left you with a heavy burden. Gaara nodded. It is a good thing though, he said. If I can pull through this with my head held high, it will mean a leader on me as a leader. Kirigakure, things were very tricky at the moment. She'd not heard from Naruto in a month since the incidents that occurred. No one had heard from him. Mei had always kept close contact with the blonde president. of the UN. They always kept each other updated on latest incidents happening around working environment. Even though Naruto himself didn't come to her, the crows had become her neighbors. They were always present at her window, even at her home. May had always feared that if Naruto was pushed to the limit he wouldn't be alright. She didn't want to get things personal with him, but her own loneliness and the fact that depression didn't actually make him a better person led them to become personal. She'd always seen him a smart and fine young man, but had never actually thought that she would end up laying naked next to him. Well, she wasn't complaining. Getting that personal to him led her to make some discoveries about him as a person. Naruto was a good person, but he had some underlying emotional problems that needed to be dealt with. His mixed feelings for his father were a problem. His feelings towards Konoha were also mixed. He didn't like what they did to him, but he couldn't bring himself to hate them because it would be contradicting to his ideal of peace. There were also those mixed feelings towards that Uchiha brat. Everything about his emotions was mixed. He was stuck between two lines. He had the capacity to forgive, but he'd been hurt too much. Still, that didn't mean he couldn't forgive. He could. The lack of any action from the parties involved just made it difficult for him. Konoha never once admitted to wronging him. The Uchiha still cursed his existence. He had been trained to keep control over his emotions, but not how to handle them. May guessed that it was good that no one programmed him on how to deal with his emotions. She believed that one could only offer guidance, but emotions had to do with self, and it was him that had to make the decisions that would suit his person. For Naruto, he buried much of his feelings because he didn't want to be a hypocrite and be contradicting to what he preached. Well, May assumed the reason he didn't talk much about people understanding each other was because even he didn't understand some people and why they did some things, but he still believed that shinobi could coexist and live in this world together peaceful. The main purpose of the UN and the UNA wasn't just to bring peace and have people understand each other, but it was to get people in the same field and find a way to stop wars and conflicts between villages from occurring, with villages allied together, and the UNA's strict rules as well as the UN watching over everything. Villages weren't likely to be fighting with each other, and even if some did start some spats, others were within their right to intervene. A problem would be when the UNA's NEC was unable to reach a decision due to divided opinions. Naruto had decided that it would be within the UN's power to act. If things came to that, the UNCC would take the appropriate course of action. So far everything was well between villages, and didn't look like things would get mixed up anytime soon, and that was at least some good news. But that didn't mean that there were no problems within the UN. Naruto's disappearance had left them with some problems that really need him to deal with him. She could only hope that they could deal with the matter peacefully. May was much more worried about Naruto, though the news about the presumed death of the Wind Daimyo spread out like wildfire to all parts of the elemental nations. More pressing was the disappearance of the blonde. Still, the body of the daimyo wasn't anywhere, just her blood and Sasuke's were found in the partly destroyed Wind Palace, so there was still some hope in her survival. Where could Naruto have disappeared off to? What they had all managed to gather from the information given by Sure was that Sasuke and Shinji attacked the Wind Daimyo. Naruto had gone there, but Shinji got away, leaving Naruto with Sasuke. That man didn't know what happened after that. Admittedly, May had used the opportunity to get what she wanted. She felt guilty for doing that. Naruto was an emotional wreck. There were so many things he didn't know how to handle when it came to emotions. He couldn't even deal with women in a proper manner. Perhaps it was why she hadn't even tried that hard to get him naked. The Mizukage was brought out of her thoughts when Ao bust through the door without even knocking. Judging by the look on his face, it was rather important, a matter of emergency evidenced when May didn't even question his unusual behavior, but simply rose from her seat and demanded to know what was wrong. What is it, Ao? It is that man with black eyes. He sounded a bit out of breath, like he had been running for a long distance. He arrived into the village a short while ago, and I hurried here as quickly as I could. I didn't want to take action because a man like him would possibly take the civilians hostage. May was already at the door by the time Ao finished delivering his report. This was some serious matter. Naruto had long warned her about this man. He'd told her that he was dangerous and should never be underestimated, considering all that he did to Iwagakure and his rumored empire. May could assume that he was here for another wake of destruction. She wasn't going to allow that to happen to Kiri, not after all the battles she fought to free this village from Yagura's blood-filled reign. What are you still waiting for? May almost yelled at Ao, who was still lagging behind her. Lead the way. We can't give him more time than he already have with his appearance. She could assume that he would know where Naruto is, since this man had also disappeared. This was his first appearance to people ever since the incident that occurred in the Wind Capital. No one had been happy by the incident. Tsunade had called for blood on whoever had decided to hurt her grandchild. May was even surprised to see the woman in the UNA's meeting. Gaara had called for calm, while Konan, chair for the committee, warned everyone to settle down. Gaara had tried all he could as acting president of the UN in Naruto's absence. To calm everyone down, he'd done so by pointing out that he was the one who was hurt most by the matter, as it was his daimyo who had disappeared, and he was even so much of a fuss like them. Further talks were held on how to deal with the issue, and with Naruto's absence they couldn't contact the Jinchurikis or members of the group he'd set up, but in accordance and following through the UN's principles, it was decided that Shinji would be marked as an international criminal and a #1 priority of the UN. The UN was also set to help out Iwagakure because of the unfortunate incident that occurred. Ao followed the Mizukage right behind her as quickly as he could. Should I send someone to call him? Would be Kisame, who appeared a week after Naruto disappeared, offering help where needed, as he was apparently worried for the blonde. It had taken a great deal for Mei to work around the matter, but she accepted it, trusting the fact that if Naruto had workings with the man, then it couldn't be anything bad. Yes, Mei said with a nod, his power will be any. Mei didn't finish as she felt an explosion just away from the Mizukage tower. She cursed and ran without even saying anything more to Ao. She could sense Kisame's chakra, and it only meant he'd recklessly attacked the enemy even when they were still keeping his survival a secret. Just away from the Mizukage tower into the empty streets, filled with water, the former Akatsuki member was grinning like a madman while Shinji stared a distance away, riding on the water. Seeing the Mizukage, Shinji smiled, disappearing from Kisame's view, and appeared in front of Mei. How nice of you to join us, Mizukage. The party wouldn't have been deliciously pleasant without you. Mei narrowed her eyes at the man. What do you want? I merely wish to continue with my parade, Shinji said casually. I wasn't able to do so in the past month because Naruto has been on my tail. He is quite determined to find me, and given how infuriated he seemed, I didn't want to deal with him. Well, that explained why he had disappeared and no one could find him, but it meant that if Naruto was searching for this man, then he would eventually land here if he was indeed on Shinji's tail. Were you afraid of him? Heavens no, Shinji said. I just didn't want to deal with a man driven by anger. In Naruto's case, he is quite dangerous in that state. Well, what do you know? I was a bit afraid. It doesn't matter anyway. He must have cooled down a bit and down enough to be reasoned with. I see, Mei said, snapping her fingers as her umbu filled up the empty streets while Kisame remained in his position. We cannot let you do as you please. That is fine by me, Shinji said. There is no fun if you don't resist. There was some silence, but before anything could happen there was a loud boom in front of Kisame. It seemed like something had crashed down the ground. Literally, the crash had been enough to force all the water Kisame had created to splash across the streets. Naruto stood up in menacing glory. The real player finally arrived. Shinji turned around to face the blonde. He outstretched his right hand. How about we clear the stag? He was cut off when Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him like a twister. Sage mode activated as well as the wind armor. There was nothing on the blonde's face but a blank expression that showed no sign of anything but a man determined. Shinji tilted his head a little as if was confused about something he looked at. Naruto's right hand, the sword of the Thunder God, was within grasp, black blood dripping from the lightning blade. It had happened so fast that he hadn't even felt the pain, but Naruto had managed to cut off his right hand. That was no problem though, he could always regenerate another one. I guess your speed isn't just all brag after all. Naruto said nothing, he merely pointed his blade at Shinji, who quickly made his distance, making the blonde turn, as he was following the man's movements quite easily. I've always wanted you to fight me. Seriously, I guess this is the day I see your might, Shinji stated, standing on top of a block away from Naruto and the others. He didn't mind the umbu around him. The bigger fish was present. These insects could all just perish for all he cared. Follow me. As much as he liked to destroy some stuff, fighting within the village wouldn't favor him, especially when surrounded by enemies along with 2 Kage-level shinobi and a crazy Jinchuriki. With Shinji gone, all eyes turned to Naruto. It was at this moment that they took notice of the fact that chakra was actually visible around his body, forming like an aura. He looked perfectly calm though. The blonde took several steps away from Mei but stopped when she called out to him, Naruto. She wanted to rush over to him and hug, but she couldn't. Are you okay? Stay out of the way, I will fight the vermin. His voice was just dead of any emotion. He didn't look at all crazed, but the lack of emotion was the worrying matter. Are you sure about this? Gaki Kisame asked, already in front of Naruto. Itachi wouldn't be all pleased with him if Naruto lost himself in anger. The blonde was after all still dealing with Itachi's death. 2 people he cared for had died, and most of all Sasuke hadn't betrayed him not just once but twice. Sure had informed him that it had been his friend's little brother who stabbed Miyuki. Naruto's left brow twitched slightly as though he had just taken notice of the former member of the Akatsuki. He held out his left hand and the crow wielding both. Shirsue's eyes appeared in a puff of smoke. He handed the crow to Kisame. If something happens to me, use it. I've already programmed both eyes. He vanished from sight. After those words let his mouth, Kisame could Only groan is it wise to let him go in that state. He will be fine. Kisame shrugged. Besides, there was insurance. Well, what are you waiting for? Aren't we going to watch the battle just to ensure that things don't step out of hand? Mei shook her head and ordered her umbu to secure the village before running off with Kisame and Ao. If you will be okay, why would things step out of hand? Mei demanded from Kisame. Naruto can't control the Kyuubi's power with his emotional control. It should be easy, but the kid has some negative emotions inside of him in the current state. It won't take much for him to flip. Kisame added. On the plus side, this battle is what he needs to release all of his anger. You must be happy that you're going to see some action. Kisame shook his head slightly. I don't like watching the area. Shinji was waiting for Naruto wasn't too far off. Kirigakure, the villagers would no doubt feel the tremors of the battle he was going to have with the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. The place was nicely set up for a good battle. A few large rocks stood piled together. Obviously there had been a battle in this place before, probably during the Civil War. It didn't concern him though, as he had no sentimental value for things like that. He wasn't even from this village to care about its history. The only reason he'd chosen to come here was because he wanted a place Naruto could fight without worrying about anything. The thought of fighting the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki in an all-out battle fueled his vile chakra. With injections of natural energy that reacted violently to his body, he wished to practically jump up and down and sing beautiful songs to the forsaken heavens. Since his rebirth, he'd never actually had a good battle. He'd never actually felt anyone cut through his body with a sword. He was the one cutting people, he was the one doing bad things, but this battle represented the chance to slice things back while expecting to be sliced back naturally. The thought of Naruto being able to kill him was outrageous, as saying that Tsunagakure was sunk beneath sea water after a tsunami hit the surface. When Naruto appeared, he felt his cold heart doing about 1,000 miles per second. He wanted nothing more than to lunge at the blonde, smack him around, or even say some nasty things just to see him angry. The blonde preached peace. Where was the peace in hunting him down? Where was the peace in rushing over here like a madman filled with anger and the thirst of his black blood? Surely the blonde didn't want to speak to him. He wanted to kill him. It was a damn shame that he couldn't get his wish, but Shinji would get his. Given this battle, he could even decide to eliminate Naruto. If he did so, it would cause more outrageous reactions from the shinobi world. The allies of the UNA would be turning back and forth trying to find solutions on how to solve the problem. Shinji knew most of them had only agreed to the alliance because of Naruto, and if he took away the lynch, everything would fall apart. He could almost laugh at the image that was sprayed within his head, but he didn't laugh. He looked at the north. The Mizukage and her company were coming, but they were of no interest. Not now. At least I'd expected you to have cooled off a little so that we can have a little talk. Shinji started standing on top of a large rock. His hands were folded across his chest with an unreadable look on his face. You appear to be rational, though. Can we talk? He tilted his head as if waiting patiently for a response from Naruto. In response, Naruto also tilted his head as if organizing his thoughts, but he didn't say a word. His response was to blur out of sight and appear in front of Shinji. The thing that stood in front of him merely raised a brow at the show of speed and the lack of response from the blonde. He wasn't expecting complete silence. He was expecting some kind of response from Naruto. The little thing that Shinji had forgotten was that Naruto had his sword in his right hand. Naruto didn't exactly drive his lightning blade through Shinji's gut. He simply pointed it through the man's gut and let rip of a thunderbolt that pierced through the man's gut. He couldn't have dodged it when he felt the little spike of chakra. When Naruto tried following this with the blade, Shinji caught Naruto's blade with his left hand. He followed this by a punch straight on Naruto's face. He again arched a brow when the punch didn't even move the blonde, but only managed to bend his head a little. He guessed it was the sage chakra that made all this hard, and it felt he had hit a steel cold wall. Naruto snapped his fingers, blowing Shinji away from him, and the rock they stood on, the blade on his hand, disappeared in a puff of smoke as he watched Shinji calmly. The opponent had settled down on the ground after being blown away from him. You're going to have to finally speak to me, Shinji stated. There was a considerable silence that felt like a few moments, but in reality it had only been a few seconds. Naruto contemplated on whether to speak to the opponent or just continue with his match. His mind couldn't think of a suitable reason to speak to the man, and so he questioned why the coldness in the tone didn't even tinkle Shinji or as much as make him feel a few scratches on his back. He merely stood still, thinking of a better response to give. It seemed that the blonde was curious about his response. Why should he speak to him? Why should he bother? They wanted two different things. He wanted to talk then battle, and Naruto just wanted to kill him and nothing more. Don't you think? Again Naruto had appeared in front of him. Unlike his usual twisting which disturbs the wind around him, he had been deathly silent, not even a small disturbance in the currents of the wind. Shinji was even surprised when Naruto's left punch was sent forth towards his chest. He quickly reinforced his defenses by placing a layer of chakra around his chest. When the punch connected with the target, it caused a shockwave and pushed Shinji backwards into a considerable distance. Naruto didn't let up on his offense. He was up at Shinji's face again. This time he gripped the man's face forceful before lifting him up into the air. Shinji didn't attempt to break free from the hold by pitting his physical prowess against Naruto's. Instead his felt hand glowed with black energy. However, before he could release his jutsu, Naruto reacted quicker by slamming the man into the ground so forcefully that there was a small boom created by the crashing of Shinji's body down on the ground. Naruto quickly summoned his blade and tried stabbing it into his opponent's forehead while he was still down on the ground, but Shinji reacted to it and cocked his head to the side, avoiding the sword from piercing him. He, self-proclaimed king of Bijus, snapped his left hand towards Naruto's right hand, holding the blade down with him. His left hand was open facing Naruto's chest. It only took a second, but an incredible amount of red flame shot through at Naruto like a bullet. The flames connected with the blonde's chest head-on, sending him flying into the air. When Naruto landed down the ground, the flames that had tried consuming him had already been dispersed by his wind armor, but he'd felt the unbearable heat, though that had been no doubt the second most intense flames that had ever hit him. Second to the flames of Amaterasu, he looked at his chest, held it a little. Even with the wind armor, there had been enough violence in the flames to burn him slightly. Nothing too dangerous. Kyuubi was already healing him. You shouldn't take your eyes off your opponent. Shinji's voice snapped Naruto out of his thoughts. The black-eyed opponent was in front of him. Didn't look like he was going to attack, but a right swing for a punch was sent blindingly towards the blonde, who ducked under the punch as he didn't want to be hit unnecessarily, as it would lower his defenses. As if he had been expecting Naruto to duck under the punch, Shinji tried kneeing the crouched blonde with his left knee. The knee was going straight to Naruto's face. The blonde blocked the attack by placing both his hands in front of him, effectively blocking the knee with both his hands. Busy Shinji didn't waste time to hit Naruto on the head with a chakra-enhanced chop. He followed this by twisting around and delivered a chakra-enhanced kick on Naruto's right shoulder, sending the blonde into the air while Naruto was still in the air. Shinji flashed just above him. Naruto was quick to react when the man went in for another chakra-enhanced punch. He placed both his hands in a crossed position and Shinji's empowered punch hit him straight on the hands. The defense did nothing to stop the power of the punch to send him down the ground. Naruto's crash to the ground resulted in a boom and a crater. Shinji clasped both his hands together. Rain spikes, he said. Small black balls formed around him before forming into sharp, thin black chakra spikes. There were more than 50 of the spikes, and it took only a second for them to speed down at Naruto's position. The speed was anything but blinding. It wouldn't give anyone a chance to dodge. Acting like sharp blades wasn't exactly they did. He snapped his fingers and let rip of an explosion rocked off from Naruto's position. The explosion tore through the ground, lifting up large amounts of debris on the other side. The mushroom had risen with the explosion, did nothing but raise Mace, concerned as she was sure Naruto was still within the explosion. If those spikes hadn't got him, then the explosion had to have. Worst case would be if both attacks got him. When the debris finally cleared, Shinji saw Naruto standing in the middle of the crater with hands held together. Bruises were visible all over his body, and one gash on his right shoulder was leaking out blood, but Shinji knew it was only a matter of time before the wound was closed by the Kyuubi, as it wouldn't risk losing its host. He assumed that the blonde was holding his hands together to gather natural chakra. The reserves had he may have been spent up on shielding himself from his earlier attack. The self-proclaimed king of Bijus took his time in landing down the ground. Don't you think my jutsu is better than your wind-style execution? Naruto seemed to consider his options for a few moments before tilting his head a little. His narrowed eyes stared at Mei's group for a moment before going back to his opponent. He blinked once, revealing the Rinnegan, and then disappeared for the first time since the battle begun. Shinji lost sight of Naruto, and that really surprised him. The blonde appeared in his sight again, in front of him, dangerously close, just inches away from him. It seemed as if he had teleported there. However, according to his knowledge, when Naruto teleports there's always a yellow flash, and if he teleported here he had to have marked him. If he was marked, there was no way he could not have known. The sound of chirping birds reached his ears as Naruto pierced through his chest with the Chidori. He almost found the idea of Naruto using the same jutsu that killed his pathetic girlfriend and nearly killed amusing, but it was nothing unexpected. As Naruto removed his hand from Shinji's chest, he yanked the black-haired right shoulder, causing their foreheads to collide. Naruto didn't waste time before delivering another Chidori, this time straight at Shinji's cut. What followed then was a grip to the neck, and Shinji was slammed down the ground. Naruto stomped his right foot on Shinji's chest without even looking. Not even when the sound bones breaking reached his ears, he pulled Shinji from the ground, lifting him up. Clear cursed marks were visible on Shinji's body parts. Naruto gritted his teeth as his chest was ripped apart by something. Crimson blood started leaking when a weapon started to form from the blonde's chest. The weapon was more like a twin cannon, and it didn't take a second for the weapon to laugh a yellow beam of energy straight at Shinji. hitting him dead on the chest, blowing a hole through it. Naruto fell to his knees for a second as the weapon crumbled down. A second later he was back on his knees and rushed straight at Shinji, who miraculously was still alive despite a hole on his chest and lots of black liquid gushing out of his wounds as well as mouth. The black-haired was on his knees though breathing lightly, labored. When Naruto attempted to kick him on the face he dodged by leaning back a little. He raised both his hands facing Naruto. Flash cannon. A black beam of energy hit straight at Naruto. The blast was of a huge magnitude and peeled off the ground while blasting the blonde away from Shinji. That was just done so that he could recover. Naruto landed a distance away from Shinji, body spotting burns and blood leaking from his mouth. Bruises were all over his body. He cursed knowing that the defensive capabilities of his wind armor had been reduced to nothing. Senjutsu gave him enough protection, but he was using wind to avoid contact with Shinji's chakra, as it was a bit harmful to his body and made it difficult for the wounds to be healed. It seems that I have underestimated you by quite a bit and overestimated my abilities. I only thought you would only be a danger when using the Kyuubi's power, Shinji stated, casually regenerating his wounds. Once that was done he stretched himself a bit and smiled. Shall we Kanban's Hoten? And Naruto cut off the man as he wasn't in the mood waste words. The jutsu he activated start to pull Shinji into his waiting right hand. He decided to use the Rinnegan's power as it seems that the man would keep regenerating his wounds abnormally. It made him question whether if the man was even human to begin with. Those wounds could have killed any normal person. Seeing that he was being dragged forcefully and knowing a little about the Rinnegan, Shinji opened his mouth. What normally takes Biju's minutes to create he did it in seconds, an alarming speed that even surprised Naruto. He formed his own tailed beast bomb, albeit it was smaller, possibly given to the little time he had to pull out his power Shinjamuda, and that went on to explode right in front of Naruto. Boom. The jutsu may have been small, but it was still formed by all 9 Biju's chakra. The explosion couldn't have been more pleasing in Shinji's eyes. The explosion rocked through the ground, causing debris to lift up, while gusts of wind that made the fireworks even exhilarating to Shinji's heart. Kisame and Ao had to hold back the Mizukage from jumping into the battlefield to check on Naruto. Not that both weren't worried when things cleared out. Shinji clasped his hands, praising Naruto. Remarkable, he chirped. I never thought you would escape without losing a hand or two. His condition wasn't that bad. There were just bruises and cuts all over, but there were lots of blood gushing out. His breathing was visibly labored. Shinji darted towards the blonde. He didn't reach him though as he was blasted away by a wordless Shinra Tensei. He wasn't deterred though, as it was exactly what he expected from Naruto and the condition he was and he snapped his fingers. Chain of explosion. Multiple small black balls formed around Naruto, dangerously close. Even though Naruto knew this was dangerous, he refused to show any emotion. Use my power, you fool, Kyuubi roared angrily. Those things will kill you. More fireworks occurred, and this time the fireworks were superior to the last one. The ground shook as flames poured out in their glorious form. Powerful gusts of wind have tore through the ground, forcing everyone to shield their eyes except for Shinji, who was frowning. He was sensing more of Kyuubi's chakra from the explosion. There was no doubt about it. He thought that this would do it, but if Naruto used the Nine Tails chakra it was another story. Oh well, the damage has already been made. He shrugged off his shoulders as he waited patiently for the flames to die down. Before the flames could die down completely, an extremely vile chakra twisted the atmosphere around the battleground. When things died down, a miniature Kyuubi with 4 tails was standing still in the center of the crater formed by the explosion. The thing crumbled down though, revealing a burned Naruto on his knees, coughing blood. His top was all but burned, so were his pants up until his knees. Pathetic human, you should be able to sense danger when you see it. Those things were just like small-tailed beast bombs. They are no different from his Shinjamuda. Kyuubi growled. If you use my chakra you will be able to continue to fight, but only with Senjutsu. However, because of the damage your body has taken you won't last long. Make every second count or I will take over your body. Naruto had never been in so much pain like this, but he was forced to swallow it as he summoned the last of his clones containing natural chakra. With nature flowing through his body he was able to breathe well enough. Wincing a bit, he summoned 2 tails worth of the Kyuubi's chakra before standing up. The chakra worked miraculously in conjunction with natural energy to heal his wounds, but the strain would eventually cause him to break soon enough. Shinji frowned. It wasn't over. Admittedly Naruto was faster than him, and now that he was using the Kyuubi's chakra it would make this another story. He had also sustained some damage himself. The last blow was supposed to have done wonders, but it appeared not. He wasn't willing to use all his tricks, not here and certainly not now. Naruto disappeared in a flash of yellow. Appearing behind Shinji, the sword of the Thunder God appeared on his right hand, and he carved a line through the opponent's back, drawing out black blood. He snapped his fingers. Wind-style execution. Shinji only turned around to face around 15 spears. Not a second later, all of them had already pierced through his body, leaving small holes around his body, specifically around his joints. With his joints ineffective, he fell down on his knees, and when he looked up to Naruto, he was already working up on his follow-up jutsu, wind-style Raisin Shuriken. Shit, Shinji cursed. Closing his eyes, he couldn't afford to be completely caught dead on with the jutsu. Boom, the jutsu exploded when it reached him, but he managed to shoot out of the explosion. He was armored though. 10 tails were swinging out from his back, and his feet were no longer human. Both his hands were missing. It wasn't for a long time though, as he formed new ones more like claws though. Naruto appeared just behind him, but he was able to quickly twist around, and 4 of his tails caught the blonde. Another Naruto appeared behind him. Kage Bunshin, the clone, was the one he'd caught. He'd left himself open, thinking the blonde wouldn't use the clone, since he never does when fighting wind-style execution blades. If there was ever a right time, this was the right time to curse. It wasn't exactly blades that had formed beside Naruto, it was a number of swirling objects just like a shuriken. The things were rotating as fast as the Raisin Shuriken. If Shinji could say, he would say that the jutsu was like miniature Raisin Shuriken were being thrown at him. Naruto held out his right hand, and just like the sister jutsu, the execution blades were upon him in half a second. Shinji brought out his tails, shielding himself with them. Naruto's jutsu cut through the tails brutally and quickly. They cut through his tails like a chainsaw. Large chunks of Shinji's tails fell down the ground. At least 3 of his tails remained, while the rest were cut off. One of the blades had even managed to cut through the right side of his chest, taking out a chunk of meat. Wind-style execution. This time it wasn't 10 spears, there were hundreds of them, and all of them shot at him without even allowing him to recover from the jutsu that had recently cut him. Shinji could bear with any kind of pain, but what he felt when hundreds of thin spears cut through his body wasn't like anything he'd experienced before. The spears pierced through like needles, didn't take much of his flesh, but left a visible hole inside his body. The sight of a man full of holes inside his body wasn't something appealing to the eyes. May had to look away from that kind of sight. It was unbearable. She could almost see the other side through the man. By now she could confirm that Shinji wasn't human, or at least didn't need any vital organs for survival. If not, he shouldn't be still breathing and spitting out a mouthful of filthy black blood. My jutsu seems better. Naruto started walking towards Shinji, who was down on the ground. Well, what was left of him anyway? You're not human, are you? I guess killing you isn't going to be easy, but I can rip your soul of your body though. He talked like he was okay. He wasn't. Another powerful hit, and he was done for it. He could barely hold the Kyuubi's chakra, and it weren't even 2 tails anymore, but only 1. When Naruto stopped in front of Shinji, the man full of holes, the man wiped the blood while most holes filled up. You've lost your sage power, yes, but it isn't required to kill you, the blonde said, holding out his right hand. You're immortal. You cannot survive. If I remove your soul, I will do that in a few seconds, but first thing first, you're not immune to pain, are you?